Hello everyone, AmyR here with Prairie Paper and Ink. Welcome to my third video using this Look for the Rainbow stamp set that comes with the Simon Says Stamp September 2019 card kit. You can also get the stamp set on its own. I'll have links to all the supplies I used. So I hadn't used this kind of cluster of floral images, as well as this big sentiment that I love. And I love how the floral images are, I'm sure they were designed specifically to fit the way I'm going to stamp them now. So I have some Bristol smooth cardstock that I've cut down to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. And I have everything lined up in my mini MISTI. I used my anti-static powder tool, wiped off or brushed off the excess. And then I am stamping the image and the sentiment with VersaFine Clair Nocturne ink. And then I am going to heat emboss it with Simon's Detail Clear embossing powder. You don't need to do this step. You would just need to either let it dry, like let the ink dry, or heat set it. I prefer the clear heat embossing because it's faster. It gives that nice raised edge that I really, really like. Plus it prevents me from smearing it because that's what I always tend to do. So after it was stamped and heat embossed, I removed the sentiment and then I just flipped the panel over because it was already lined up to fit on the one end of the card front. So I just had to flip the panel over, use my anti-static powder tool again just to be safe, and then stamp the image with that VersaFine Clair Nocturne ink, and then clear heat embossed that one as well. So now I've got the florals on the top and the bottom, you know, just like framing the sentiment. So after I did all that, I am going to use the Karin Brushmarker Pro. If you follow me on Instagram, I just did a post yesterday, I think. It was recent. About these markers that I got and the swatches I did, everything. So that'll be on my Instagram. These are really nice. I got them because Christina Werner did a video on them and they looked fabulous. So I had to order a set for myself as a very early birthday present. Really, you can call it any time of the year. Everything's an early birthday present. So anyway, so far I like them. I can't like compare them to like everything. This is pretty much my first impression of them. They do have a felt tip, not a brush tip, which I actually do prefer. I like a felt tip. Like brush tips are okay, but I find that just because I'm heavy-handed, etc., that more often than not I press down too much with a brush tip. So I'm so far liking these. I would say these are more juicy than my Tombow markers. The one thing I like about them is the barrel. You can see through the barrel and you can see the amount of liquid in it, so that's kind of a nice thing too. And yeah, the reason Christina Werner was really raving about them is she said these work really, really nice on watercolor paper. I've only swatched them on Canson XL watercolor paper and I was pleasantly surprised like how nicely they moved, but I haven't done anything more than that. And habit for me is just Bristol Smooth. If you are struggling, whether it's whatever type of coloring medium it is, whether it's, you know, watercolor markers or just little watercolors and different things like that, and you have a hard time like getting the color to move and blending and all that sort of stuff, Bristol Smooth makes a huge, huge difference. It's the same thing with ink blending. If you have a hard time blending inks together or just blending ink in general to make backgrounds, try it on Bristol Smooth. It's totally a game changer because there's a coating on that cardstock and it lets everything kind of sit on top of it more. So you have more time to move things around. So I'm going to say I like these, but then I like all coloring mediums. That's just something I'm into. I like trying new ones and experimenting. So yeah, I had fun with these. The coloring was very simple. I just used one color per, you know, part of the image. So I used one for the green, one for the yellow flowers, one for the orange flowers, one for the pink flowers. Kept it really simple. I would just scribble it on like I do with anything else. And then I'm pulling out the color with my little detail water brush. And I added like a sepia brown for the flower centers. And then I went in with one of the grays just around the images just to give them that little bit of shading. I will say, I noticed this when I did my swatches with these markers. The grays are slightly different. I think they're meant not to be as water reactive. Like, it works here, but again, it's because I'm using the Bristol Smooth. But I noticed when I did my swatching that the grays don't react with water like everything else does. And I think it's intentional on their part because it's more meant for like brush markering and like maybe adding shadows and depths, but not so much like pulling the color out like I am here. However, even though it doesn't seem like they're meant like that, I was able to get pretty good results. But I was using Bristol Smooth. Plus, I wasn't aiming for it to be perfect. I just wanted that, you know, the darker gray closer to the images. And then I was okay if it wasn't, you know, a perfectly smooth blend out to white. I'm fine with that. Also because I'm adding splatter, of course. So I put this in my splat box. Everything is dry at this point. And I'm using some Distress Oxide sprays. And I'm just applying, like, shaking up the spray really good to mix up all the pigments. And then I'm just applying it to an acrylic block. And then using a paintbrush to add the splatter because I wanted a very fine splatter. I didn't want big blobs like I do when I just take the nozzle off the bottle, you know, and flick that. And then I get the great big blobs and that fun, really texture look. But with this, I wanted just really fine splatter because I just wanted that extra bit of texture, a little bit of shimmer, because here I'm adding some Perfect Pearl powder that I had mixed with water. And same thing, I added this to my acrylic block after mixing up really well and then splattered it with the paintbrush just so I get that nice, fine, even, not necessarily even, but just fine, small splatters. I didn't want great big blobs on this because there's all the, you know, the fine detail of the images and whatnot. So I did the pink, added the Perfect Pearls, and then couldn't resist adding some orange and some yellow as well. So I have some Spice Marmalade, Distress Oxide spray, and then I'm also going to add some Squeezed Lemonade Distress Oxide spray, and same thing, mixing them up really good, adding just a little bit to the acrylic block, and then just doing a nice little bit of a splatter onto this entire card front. So it just kind of pulls those colors in, but isn't so much that it's completely taking over everything. So after I've added all my splatter, I'm going to let everything dry, and I also tried to show, and I'll show at the end too, I'll turn a light on, so you can kind of see there's like the nice little shimmer from the Perfect Pearl powder mix too. It just gives it that little extra something. So I let this completely dry, or I thought it was completely dry. I still managed to smear it. Like, I can't seem to not. So use my paper trimmer to trim this down to smaller than an A2 card base. So I ended up trimming it down to about 4 inches by 5 1/4, just because I wanted the card base to kind of frame this whole panel. And my card base is some craft cardstock cut to 4 1/4 by 11, and I scored it at 5 1/2 with my Teflon bone folder. And then once that was scored, I'm going to stamp the inside with that same floral image. So I'm going to line this up in my mini MISTI again, and this time I'm going to stamp it with the same colors of the sprays I used. I'm going to use my Distress Oxide inks. And to do that, I'm just holding it on an angle and basically just pressing the corner of the ink pad onto the different areas. So that way I can use multiple ink colors all on this one little image. And I'm not worried about it getting, you know, completely perfect. Like some colors are going to get over, like, you know, some of the yellows and the oranges and the pinks get onto the leaves and vice versa. I'm not too concerned about it. I'm just dabbing that color on till I have the entire image inked up and just kind of working lightest to darkest. So I start with the yellow, added the orange, added the pink, and then I'm going in and adding the green, which is peeled paint Oxide ink, to all of the like leaf images. And then I'm going to stamp that onto the inside of the card. With this first stamp, or this first impression, I didn't get enough of the Squeezed Lemonade on the one flower, so I just added a little bit more, stamped it down. The beauty of having a stamp platform like the MISTI. And then I'm going to flip around this card base here so I can stamp it again, just because I thought it would look nice with the way the card front looks. It'll also be on the inside. And because it's stamped like this, I'm not going to add any other sentiments. You can just write right over it with like a gel pen. That always looks really nice. So now the inside is stamped. I'm going to adhere the card front with some craft tacky glue to the outside of the card. And then to finish it off, I'm going to add some bling, of course. Also need to add some bling because it'll cover up the couple of smears that I had made with those, like rubbing my fingers against the splatters or whatever I did to cause the smears. That's where the bling comes in handy. So I have the Nuvo gemstones that came in the kit that I've literally almost used up completely by this point because I'm adding them to everything. So I'm going to sprinkle those throughout the card front here, and then I'm just going to adhere them into place with some craft tacky glue and just picking them up with my jewel picker. And once I've got my little boo-boos covered up so nobody can see them, this card is finished. So as always, there will be a link below the video to my blog post. There will be a supply list with links to all the supplies I use, so you can check that out below if you are interested. Thank you all so much for watching and subscribing and thumbs upping and commenting on my videos. I really appreciate it. And I will see you all very soon in the next video. Bye!